Welcome to the HR Empowerment Podcast, where we will uncover strategies and new insights from HR professionals who discuss up-to-date regulations, best practices, and the most pressing topics like diversity and equity, leadership, dealing with difficult situations, and much more that affect your bottom line and business. Thanks for joining us.
Hey everybody, Wendy Sellers here. Welcome back to our podcast. We are excited today to talk to our guest, who we'll get into in a minute, but we're going to be focused on something like, I don't know, everybody's going through burnout right now. I think a bunch of us, me especially, I need to be listening to the advice of our guest today because I am burnt out so much of everything that's going on, really since the pandemic, not just 2025. So with that said, hey, JC, how you doing?
Oh, Ms. Wendy, it's good to hear your voice, and thanks for having me back on our show. I'm hanging in there. I'm doing okay. A little bit of a rough day, but I'm doing okay.
All right. Well, we're going to make your day turn around by giving some really great advice from our guest, who I'd like to introduce. Welcome to the show, Eddie Truong. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I hear that you're the founder of E.R.A Coaching and a professionally trained inner transformational coach. That's a mouthful. Who helps high performers overcome burnout, overthinking, and phone addiction. Whoa, that's a huge one. Tell us, how you got started doing that and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, and really the story of how I got started way before I knew what coaching or mental health was. It started when I was 18. This is when I achieved my lifelong dream of earning a full ride scholarship to study in the US for university. And, this is a dream I've been having since I was like 13, 14. And I spent all of my middle school and high school preparing for this. I broke it down into different steps. The first step is to take the TOEFL, which is Test of English as a Foreign Language, required for every international student. And I remember the requirement to get a full ride scholarship was to get a 100 over 120 for the TOEFL score.
Wow.
And for my first try, I got 101, and I say that's
nice.
it. That's all I could do, and I take that extra 1 point. And the next year, I focused on the SAT test. And when I was doing the test, it was by the score of 2400, and I was able to score 1950, which is lower than the required 2000 for full ride scholarship in most school. But that was all I could do. And then after that was applying for different school, get rejected, until one day, 2007. It was February 2012. I got accepted and offered a full ride scholarship by University of Texas Arlington. And I was cloud nine. I can't describe to you the feeling of being 17 and having worked for a dream so long and achieving it. I was so happy that I thought all my problem is gonna be fixed, thinking that from here on now it's just gonna be a smooth ride.
Right.
I was so excited about the move to the US too. And I remember one of my really close friends at the time, a few months before my move, he was like, hey, are you not afraid of, or even think about the culture shock? Like, are you not worried about that? And I say, culture shock. And this is word for word what I told him. I say, culture shock. I love hot dog. I eat pizza like no tomorrow. I love hamburger. I watch MTV. I love HBO. Like, what's culture shock? I was ready for the US culture. And Wendy, I could have not been more wrong.
Right.
And the first struggle I have was the loneliness and the isolation. I remember, and this didn't really hit me the first day I landed. It actually hit me about a few days after, when I was invited by one of my roommates to go to this local community talent show. This is a show where people were singing, dancing, having a lot of fun, and including myself. And I was laughing and just really enjoying myself. And suddenly, in the midst of all this, something hit me, and I start looking at my left, then I look at my right, and then I realized that I didn't know anybody here, and that the next person I know, or the next person I call family, was actually 10,000 miles away.
Oh, wow.
And for a 17-year-old kid, that was too much to handle. And I broke out crying. My friend was very confused why. And I do remember the worst feeling was when I talked to myself, is this not a dream I could wake out of? Like when I go home, when I go to bed, wake up the next morning, this will continue to be my reality. And it's gonna be like that for a long time. So that was kind of the beginning of everything just going downhill. And adding on to that was the culture shock. I didn't, one of the things I was able to connect with people and make friends as a kid was my sense of humor. But one thing I learned the hard way was that the American sense of humor was vastly different than the Vietnamese sense of humor. I've learned that in the U.S. you got Americans very sarcastic, whereas for somebody who
That would be me.
so that was I was very challenging for me to know when it's like being serious and when it's like being playful. I also learned the hard way that if someone say, "Hey, you're a really smart cookie, Angel," they don't really think you're a smart cookie. So that not knowing how to make friend, along with the huge pressure to succeed, because I make it this far, I have to be able to graduate with a high level, be able to maintain my scholarship. Everything all rolled together. You know, everything just led me to a period of severe depression. And
Okay.
this is
So
when
this,
I didn't even know or didn't even know how to communicate or even like have the vocabulary to describe what I was feeling.
mhm.
But and it went on for so long, and the one way for me to cope with that was not healthy, but I dived myself into studying. I just I locked myself in library from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. every single day. Not because I love studying so much, but because it felt like the only thing I have control over, and it felt like failing or losing my scholarship would be like a fate worse than death for an insecure 70 years old. So that also led to burnout. That also led to overthinking and constant anxiety. Until one day I say something has to change, and this 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 cannot be. This wouldn't be a healthy way to live for the rest of my life. And I remember specifically there was one moment when I was walking home from school, and sometimes when you're walking, you just kind of have this like random thought bob into your mind. I would have that, and I was just randomly thinking, when I was I'm 18, so let's round up to 20 years old. Let's say I live to 60 years old, which is like 40 years from now, which is kind of like pessimistic already. But I remember thinking 40 more years, I don't know if I could live that long. Like I
Live
could know
that
I could,
way, right?
yeah,
Under
I could know if I
that.
could last that long. And I remember that right there was the moment where I say this can be healthy and something has to change. And that was when I really start diving myself, become very curious and intrigued in learning about not just how to perform at the peak level, but how to maintain the inner peace and sanity while doing that. And that was the start of my personal road journey. Is a lot of confusion at the beginning, but the more I do it and the more I learn, and also the more I talk to people, understand that this story wasn't unique to me, but it's actually a very relevant story for our society.
Yeah,
Many of us,
absolutely.
many of us, very successful on the outside, yet feel very broken and empty on the inside. And it became a passion of mine to really helping those who was in the same shoe I was in, and that's what led me to be on this journey and to be with you right now today.
It's
Thank you so much.
absolutely fascinating, Wendy and Eddie. When we're talking about that inner peace, that inner transformation, our whole life isn't just solely devoted to living at home and maybe interacting with those that we know, but a lot of it
Mm-hmm.
does have to do with work, right? And
Mm-hmm.
interestingly, employees who feel that their employer supports mental health, believe it or not, they're 26% less likely to report symptoms of
Mm-hmm.
burnout through those
Mm-hmm.
eras of inner transformation. Back to
Mm-hmm.
you.
Yeah, that's actually 100%. I'm so glad that you brought that up, JC. I mean, most of our listeners today are in the HR space or they're wearing one of many hats, and one of them are the HR hats as well. And so I would say, and Eddie, you're the expert at this. I mean, geez, we'll just say since the pandemic, really,
Mm-hmm.
my goodness, so many people are probably reaching out to like employee assistance programs, EAPs, and
Mm-hmm.
benefits to get assistance with mental health and these challenges that you're talking about. So what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, absolutely. And I think the number one thing, and it's such a unique and such interesting statistic you brought up, JC. 26% reported less. And I think one of the key thing that I think would really have transformed this is for at the very management level, at the very top level, to treat mental health or treat, the emphasis on clarity, presence, and peace as not something as like a waste of time or a waste of effort, but something that actually drive the profit that's actually very profitable endeavor for them. To be able to have, employee that's very happy and very calm and be able to make great decisions from a place of calm and clarity. And a lot of it, the burnout to me, the number one reason for it was the disconnection. That's what led to burnout. And this is not, I'm not just referring to the disconnection between human to human, which is very
Right.
relevant in the workplace, because let's be honest, workplace can become a very transactional environment
Yep.
when every conversation is more about the deadline or the project, the KPI, and especially I have been able to witness and be a part of many conversations between a supervisor and employee when the human being connection was neglected and almost something like just not almost like a distraction, but everything we're focusing on. Are you gonna get this one done? Are you gonna stay late for this? And that become a place where people don't feel seen and don't feel safe, and it's because of that, that's also lead to connected to the disconnection with ourselves, the disconnection from the meaning. A lot of us, and I hear this a lot from a lot of high performers I work with, is that they lost meaning in what they do. They don't feel like what they're doing bring a meaningful, creating meaningful impact, or at least not the meaningful impact they want to have. And it become something. It become like it become a responsibility or something just to pay the bill. So a lot of high performers feel like they have to trade their time and the inner peace to get the salary,
Right.
and that disconnection to meaning, disconnection to self, that lead to it also lead to emotional suppression, right? It's when you have to suppress your emotion to be professional. We hear this a lot phrase, get over it. Come on, get over it. Let's
Yeah.
get back to work. And emotional suppression to me will create a lot of emotional depth, because emotional energy don't just disappear if you don't allow it to be felt, allow it to show up, and allow it to be
Exactly.
expressed. So all of this just keep building up and building up and building up. That leads to burnout. That leads to not just physical exhaustion, but also emotional and spiritual exhaustion. And the way the analogy I have is like an athlete who keep training and training, just focus on training, but no rest, and thinking that rest actually slow them down, or is detrimental to the role. And soon enough they will lead to burnout and just physical exhaustion. But the way we should do is look at rest as an unfair advantage. A company that favor rest, that favor presence, that favor mental health will have a very unfair advantage uh, over their competition.
Eddie, this is fantastic. To support what you're saying there, according to Gallup, 60% of employees, they report being stressed at their jobs every day, with emotional exhaustion and workplace disconnection driving those record high burnout rates. When you're talking about those high performers, Eddie, how do you exactly move that needle from A to B and help that 60% that are feeling that in the workplace?
Yeah, I thank you, JC. I have that same question too, because I myself, I believe I'm a high performer. And I just got done. Um, Everybody that's listening before our call, I was like, I so need this because I'm so burnt out myself right now, and I am
Mm.
my own boss, so I have no one to blame but myself. But I do also feel like I see that with overachievers and high performers that we feel that it's expected of us
Mhm.
by, in my case, my customers, my vendors, but in many other people's cases, their managers, and then the managers and directors, and so on. So how do we, first of all, give those high performers who are saying, hi, I need help? How do we even give them a safe space first? And then
Mhm.
what do we do after that?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question and fantastic statistic, JC, once again. And so the way for me, when I do working with high performer, right? And the very first step I do is something very almost like very against a high performer nature, which is to slow down, which is to practice breathing. Seems so simple, but just by creating that space, allowing us, and that space has to come from within. Just be able to slow down and be able to, and that's why I love working high performer, because working with me, they're able to have that specific time block for them to slow down. The purpose of our whole session was just for you to slow down and to really be able to be with yourself and to still and to be calm with your mind. And because a lot in our professional world, we don't have a space specifically for that. So be able to create that is something a lot of high performers appreciate. And from a place of really calm, really slow down, we have to, number one, learn to sit with emotion, because a lot of things that drive our behavior was a running away from our emotion. If, for example, even with being on your phone, technology addiction, right? The number one driver motivation for that was that we want to run away from boredom. Or someone who chasing a relationship after a relationship, the number one driving factor for that was to run away from loneliness, or even run away from the feeling of not being worthy, or not being attractive enough, whatever the case may be. So learning, and I think this is the number one most important skill in the 21st century, is a skill and the ability to be able to sit with your emotion. And when I say sit with your emotion, one of the practices we do is to really allow the emotion to come. One thing we do is to, number one, name it. The what I say is name it to tame it. For example, you could say, "Oh, I'm feeling frustration right now." Okay, that's anxiety. Okay, and the second question I ask is, where do you feel it? And if you can describe it, it doesn't have a color, an image, a sensation. By asking this question, by naming it, asking this question, we take ourselves, moving ourselves away from being identified and being just enthralled by the emotion and the story that come with it. We take a step back and become the witness of the emotion, and just become the observer and allow that emotion just to play itself out.
Right.
And a key thing that I always remind my client that I work with is the whole point of the practice isn't to make the emotion go away. Because once you have that thought that say, "Oh, I'm only doing this so that emotion can be just go away quickly, so I can get back to being the calm
Yeah.
and present self I want to be." The moment you have that, and the subconscious mind is very sensitive, the moment you have that, it creates inner resistance, and that will also lead to you doing it. Emotion is a compass to let us know what the need that we have that's unmet. So be able to understand, allow it to be felt, and then the emotion will just be released naturally. And from that place of calmness and clarity, that's when we can really uncover, really uncover what has been driving you. Because the number one thing that, and this is very difficult for me to admit to, but the number one truth that high performer very afraid to admit the is that all this drive and motivation is actually rooted in fear, or in lack, or in the fear of not being enough. When I was in my own career trying to chase a six-figure career, or the next accomplishment, or whatever it was from a place of, if I don't achieve that, I will be considered insignificant, not enough. So being truthful and being honest and really understand what's driving us, and really examine, is that something that's healthy for a long term, or what other motivations we want to adopt, what would
Okay.
be something that bring us fulfillment, and what something that create the impact we want to create. So in short, it really starts with creating a space where we can slow down, see our emotion, allow it to be released, and from then we start stepping into the place of calm and clarity, and we decide the life that we want to live.
Awesome. I love that. Well, I do have a question. So I think, we all agree that, many companies equate high performance with the constant hustle, right? Which leads to
Mhm.
burnout. But how can leaders and HR teams redefine what high performance really looks like, so that it does include everything that you just talked about, the clarity, the presence, the well-being? Where do we start?
Mhm. Mhm. I think it's very important for, especially everything to me, start with the top level, the management. It's very important that we start measuring performance not just by output or productivity, but also by the energy and the clarity that one person bring. That because a truly high performing person isn't really the one that is doing the most, but it's the one that doing the right thing from a place of clear and calm state. And to me, leader plays such an important role in this because the leader sets the tone for the culture of a company. I'm sure most of us have the experience of working with a boss when things start, hitting the fan, and it was chaos. The boss become very frustrated and very, anxious, and they express that, and then they express the emotion toward the employee, and that create a trickle down, almost like a ripple effect, where the energies feel very chaotic and everything feels so rushed, and that to me was the number one recipe for burnout. But some of us, a few of us, myself included, have another opportunity to work under a boss, a supervisor that's very calm and collected, that seem like to have this very amazing ability that no matter what the situation, no matter how hectic it be, they're able to slow down, make a clear decision, and just creating a space of safe and certainty for the employee. And that also create a ripple effect to everyone else. So understanding, to me, is understanding, measuring. So I would say is making the ability to be present, to be the ability to be calm and clarity. It's not, do not just make it as something like a nice trait to have, but make that a performance
Right.
skill. Make that something that, an employee can be self-evaluated, evaluated by the employee, because doing that evaluation too is also signal to employee that this is something that we focus on. This is something that we emphasize. This is something that we reward and we take and we favor.
Yeah, actually, I think JC has a stat he wants to share
That's
with me,
right.
but then I have an idea that can kind of go with this too. Go ahead, JC.
Thanks. Yeah, employees who strongly agree that their employer cares about their overall well being, they're actually 69% less likely to actively search for a new job and 71% less likely to report burnout. Wendy, back to you.
That's what we want, right? People not looking for new jobs and not being burnt out, so that they could come back with clarity and presence and well-being. So one thing that I've done with anybody who will listen to me, and including all my listeners here today, is in my job descriptions, I'm an HR consultant. I help companies of all sizes, but in my job descriptions, when I'm working with clients, I put their company values in the job description. So it's essential duties and non-essential duties, knowledge, skills, and abilities, lifting, mental requirements, things like that. And then at the end, I always put, these are our company values that you have to comply with. And if you don't comply with them, then you can't work in this role. Really, you can't work at this company, because then everybody has the same company values. If your company values need to be updated, let me know. I could help you with that. But you might want to consider having something in your company values with the words of like clarity, presence, or well-being. And then you're interviewing according to that, because we're interviewing on everything for job descriptions. And then we're also using our job descriptions to give feedback. So what are your thoughts on that, Eddie?
I think that's an amazing practice, because by seeing that, it showed that a company value more than just productivity or output or just skill. Seeing that on the job description signify that this is a company that care about the culture, and by caring about the culture, it was also mean caring about the people within that culture, and make an emphasis to protect that culture, to protect the well-being, the mental well-being of the people working there. So to me, that's, if I was an employee and I see that in the job description, that would be like a red green flag for me to understand that this is a company that cares. This is a company that understand the importance of the human being behind the productivity, behind the job. And just to circle back, JC, on the amazing stat you brought up, 69% reported that, if I remember correctly, that they would enjoy working there, who would like to work there longer. Because to me, that statistics show that by caring about a human being, by caring about the mental health, by creating that safe space, this is not slowing things down.
Right.
This is not costing you money. This is not like, because I think that's still a very mainstream mindset of, if slowing things down mean losing money.
Right.
This is like slowing things down so it can go faster and further. And I mean, the number one cost of any business is the retention rate and the high turnover rate. So by
Right.
having an amazing retention rate, that to me that's such an unfair advantage that company need to understand and realize, and one day understand the importance of mental well-being and presence and calm and clarity in the workplace, I think there will be a much more shift and a much more emphasis on that in the workplace.
Mr. Eddie,
Absolutely.
you brought up something really fascinating there with the safe space and creating that realm, right? According to McKinsey.com, in one of their recent reports, employees who feel comfortable discussing their mental health at work, they're actually 2.6 times more likely to report being satisfied with their job. Wendy, would you consider that related to an emotional root somehow?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Eddie already, kind of led us down that road of saying, okay, if I'm going to summarize, if you're good to your people and you treat them well and you let them know you care about them as a human, not just as a widget maker, that they are going to come back and be like, okay, now I care about you. And the cycle is just going to keep going, that the employee's like, I'm happy. And then Eddie talking about what you just kind of mentioned about, like, okay, then we don't have to replace them because they're not looking for a new job. Folks, and I know our listeners know this, recruiting is so expensive these days. Not even just the cost of putting a job ad, which is like probably, I'm just going to say 100 times more than
The
it was even
training.
4 years ago. But the time to interview people, you got to interview 10, 20 people, and then 3 or 4 of you have to do it. Then you got to, as you just said, train. And now you got to, get them to the point where they're like, oh, I love this company. And that just doesn't happen just like that. So there's so much of this that is combined together. And it's just so important to know. Now, Eddie, I think you have a book coming out.
hmm
What's the name of the book?
The book is The Digital Freedom Guide: How to Reduce 80% Screen Time in 2 weeks using just 3 simple steps.
Okay, so talk to me without giving it all away. Talk to me about this. You talked about cutting phone dependency by 80% in just 2 weeks. For HR teams or people that are wearing the HR hat, what are some practical ways to help employees and leaders create these healthy boundaries with technology? And I'm listening to this too, Eddie, because I'm an addict as well there, especially when we feel like we always have to be on because that's part of the job, even when we're home.
I think the number one step too, and this is very important, all started with the awareness and the education. Because the most dangerous thing about technology dependency or addiction is, unlike drug or alcohol addiction, we all know, society all know it's bad. It's well documented. There's a huge effort to overcome it. Technology addiction has become something very normal. And not only that, it's also being disguised as connection and productivity, right? How many times you hear high performers say, "Hey, I'm checking one more email," or how many times you hear somebody say, "Oh, I'm only on social media so I can keep in touch with my friend." So the biggest danger to me is a lot of people not understanding the true danger of technology addiction, how it's taking away from our clarity, from our presence, from our emotional, the ability to regulate our emotion as well. Because we always just constantly hijack our brain, our neural system with dopamine, constantly over and over again. Especially high performer who work in professional in an office setting, uh, we use our computer for work already. But when we say we want to take a rest, take a break, we continue to be on our phone or either tablet or whatever form it may be. So our mind
Yeah.
constantly shift from working to being entertained and just screen. And then we wonder, why do I feel so tired by the end of the day? Why do I feel so, why do I have such brain fog and feel just mentally fatigued? So number one thing to me is having that awareness, create that awareness and understanding the actual danger of phone addiction. And the second step, I think, is to shift the mindset of, instead of looking at technology addiction as a discipline problem, look at it as a disconnection problem. Because, and
Correct.
this is very relevant for high performer, because anyone who's a high performer is typically very disciplined in a lot of aspect of their life, but yes, somehow they still struggle with phone addiction, and that create a lot more guilt and self-judgment, because like, why this little device took control me? Why can't I not just get over this? And because of that, there's a lot of like guilt build up with that. But when we look at phone addiction as not a discipline problem but a disconnection problem, because it's a disconnection, to human connection. It's disconnection to ourselves. It's a disconnection from the emotion that we run away from. And so the one way that we can help overcome this on the company level, in which HR leader, is to help by designing environment that support presence, that support connection. And this could mean, creating a space of no notification or a device-free meeting. Or it could also be encouraging, deep work block without interruption. And my personal favorite, is creating and emphasizing on more team building activity or event where people can have that human to human connection that's very lacking in a lot of workplace. Instead of looking at creating a space where people don't look at each other as just coworker or supervisor, but a place of a human being.
Right.
This another human being with their own life, with their own story, and be able to look at them as friends. So to me, just creating that environment where connection and presence is being celebrated and being emphasized and being rewarded, I think it's the very first step in helping overcome this technology addiction, especially in the workplace. And truthfully, all these tips or all these things are just something personally. This is something I wish that had been implemented to my own workplace. But so it might not be the answer to every company.
Okay.
But really, what I really want to start,
Right.
is to start having that conversation about what is something that we could do to create a better working place where technology addiction is something that no longer an issue. Because once we have a workplace that's fulfilling,
Right.
that people are connected, then the urge to escape it through technology or internet just naturally disappear. But it's important to have that conversation together.
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely. So number one, listeners, get Eddie's book. You can get it on his website, The Digital Freedom Guide, Break Free from Overthinking and Tech Addiction for Good. And then number two, make sure you re-listen to everything that Eddie has talked to us about, just about burnout and making sure that everybody in our team, including our high performers, are feeling that, okay, I can take a break. I could actually take that PTO day and not check my email during it, or I can, don't have to go to every single meeting. I don't have to work 90 hours a week. I'm repeating some of this stuff so I remember it just this evening alone. So it's super, super important. So Eddie, thank you so much for this. This has been amazing.
Yes.
How can people connect with you?
I could be found on my website, www.eddietruong.com. So EDIETRUONG, G as in Gary.com. And then also on social media, on Instagram at Eddie Truong _era. So Eddie Truong _ERA. And my book could be found at book.eddietruong.com. And I just want to say sincere thank you to you, Wendy, and JC for having me on. So I love to have this gift for all your listener. When you check out the book and you use the code ThankYou100, you'll be able to get the book for free, because it's my sincere hope
excellent.
that this brings some value to you. And I wrote the book from a place of not somebody who did the research or went to coaching training to write a book. I wrote from a place from someone who suffered with technology addiction for over 10 years. And this was a book that I wrote that I wish an 18 years old me could have, that was available to that person, so that I could, understand what was going on and understand that a lot of people going through it. So I hope the book brings you some value and comfort during this time.
Absolutely. I will be getting that as soon as we wrap up here today. And folks, I will put all his website information and that code in the podcast notes. Thank you so much for being here today, Eddie. We appreciate it. Yes. And everybody who's listening, I really do hope this podcast session has been beneficial and helpful to you. Take care, everyone, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for joining the HR Empowerment Podcast, brought to you by E.R.A Training Advantage. We hope you've gained new insight and strategies to navigate the HR profession. We look forward to you joining us again on the HR Empowerment Podcast.